Hey everybody, and welcome again to Restoration Gathers, and it's Thursday night, and we're talking true worship with some of our worship leaders at Restoration. And tonight I've got Zach Harrison. Hey Zach, how you doing, brother?
Hey guys, doing good.
Yeah, Zach's the guy. He's the guy that sits back and does the bass, plays bass with us, and he did some guitar playing and worship leading. It's been some time since you've done that, but you've been a solid bass player with us for quite a few years. And and then beneath me, I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but we got Derek Snowden. How you doing, Derek?
What's up, guys? Good to see you.
So many of you know Derek is the guy who does a lot of the guitar, and he does some band directing and he's done some singing. He's the guy with the tats. He always looks pretty sweet up there doing his thing.
Oh, yeah.
The hyper one.
Oh man, so it's really great to have you guys on here. We were gonna have Victoria as well. Victoria was the one who she plays violin for us. She's a very talented musician that way. But she's not feeling so well. She had to back out, and she's also pregnant. So, yeah, we can just kind of keep her in our thoughts and our prayers, as she's doing all right, but she just said her voice isn't doing so great. So she's gonna come and visit another time. So anyway, so it's just you two and me today, and we're gonna be talking about true worship and stuff like that. But first of all, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about your guys' history, and your history involving music and also with worship. So maybe we'll start with you, Zach, and tell us how'd you get into playing bass? How'd you get into playing music? And what was its relationship to leading worship?
Yeah, so I started when I was 10 years old, actually, playing the bass. I started because of actually who you guys had on last week, Dale Egenschweller. He was leading at Old Lake Avenue Christian Church. Man. Yeah, so he was slapping the bass up there and singing, and I was a little 10-year-old watching him, and my dad and brother both play guitar. And so it just made sense that I needed to do something different. So
your dad's on the worship team too, right?
He is, yeah. So, and my brother plays at another church as well. So he played a long time at Lake Avenue with us. We had a youth band at the time. I remember Dale will even tell you that the first bass I picked up, it was, taller than I was. This thing, huge on me, but just kind of fit. I mean, they needed a bass player, and it was just something that I loved doing. And so, man, we did it all the time. It was just something. Our youth band was just something that was. It was just a blessing from God, I guess, back then. It had me and Jimmy Keller and my brother, and our youth minister at the time was John Segraves, and he was singing with us and everything. So,
oh, Johnny.
Yeah, man. So it was a good thing. Good time.
Am I right in saying that the name of your band was Final Answer?
Yeah. So we came out with a little album where we were playing, old Third Day songs and things like that. And that was the time of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? And so that was a big thing. Final Answer. Is that your final answer? And so that became the name of the band.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm 33 now. Turned 33 last week, and so 23 years or so doing this, and it gets better and better. I can tell you that.
So you started learning music in the context of learning actually play worship.
Yeah.
So those are connected for you kind of from day one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I honestly, until I got a little older, I didn't really know anything else besides playing at church, playing worship songs. And, I would play, obviously, at home. My brother was a big blues guy. He plays blues guitar and stuff. And so we'd listen to, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton, all those, and play those around the house. But, anything else, it was always just worship music, because that's what we did. That's what my dad did. Everybody. So
now, for a time, you went off. If I know the story right, you wanted to play. Started just playing, just like in a band. It was called Electric Smoke, right?
Yeah, Electric Smoke. So
what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know the meaning of any of that. So
what were you guys? Did you guys play cover music or original, like top 40 stuff, or what'd you do?
No, man. So it was all, like Kings of Leon was kind of some big stuff that we were playing.
All right.
They loved, all the classic rock, basically, is what it was. Mm-hmm. And so they were not any good at all, I can tell you that. So it was these guys, guys I graduated with, and they just wanted to, bang on drums and guitars, and they had a huge following, though, which is what made it so fun. So we'd show up at these bars to play, and I mean, the line is out the door. Not huge bars or anything, right? So W.O. Wright's over by Wright State was kind of our home bar, if you want to call it that. And so, we'd jam out.
Yeah, man. So I want to get into the topic of the relationship between worship and music. But before I do, I kind of want to talk, get Derek's story. I might be wrong about this, Derek, but my impression is that things were kind of different for you. Like you learned music earlier, but maybe I'm wrong. Why don't you tell us your history and your story as it relates to learn to play guitar, learn to play music in general, and then also how that related to worship?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was kind of similar to Zach.
Okay.
I started playing, like we started going to my uncle's church, and he was up there playing the guitar and made it look pretty cool. And man, I think I was like 10 years old. And so I got a paper route and got my first, $150 and went out and bought a guitar and an amp. And I think it was like less than a year later, I was on the praise and worship team.
Okay. Yeah.
It was similar to that. It was a much different experience of worship than what we do now. But, back then it was a whole nother, it was just so crazy. Like secular Christian music was like of the devil, you know what I mean? Like rock Christian, it's like, no. That's just, that's a gateway drug. But yeah, so I did that for a while and kind of grew up in the same kind of way of, following the Christian stuff for a while. And then, I came of age that, I realized that girls really like guitar players. And
they do.
The more you play the music they love, the more they love you. So you start doing that, and then I started realizing, that I was creative and creative enough that why should I play somebody else's stuff when I can write my own? And at that time, I thought I was the coolest thing since sliced bread. So, let's start competing in the market. And I just had it kind of wrapped up in my mind that that's what I was going to do for a living. And I kind of always knew. And I went after that, and long and behold, somehow, some way it, worship grabbed me back. And I guess I'd say I always knew that it would, but I didn't know to what extent. And I was ready to put up the fight, but it did. I mean, it grabbed me. It knocked me straight down to my knees, and then embraced me. And worship was, the main part of that. When I first joined Restoration's worship team, which has been the only worship team I've been on since I was like that young age. I remember we would, I'd get on the worship team, and I'm constantly listening to worship songs. And it wasn't like the rest of everybody else who was on the worship team, because like I hadn't heard these songs. You guys have been playing these songs. These are first listens for me. So I'm driving and crying, and I'm supposed to be learning guitar parts, but I'm over here all caught up in my feels, and like it was like so much of an experience. It was insane. So staying in that worship music really helped kind of fast track my foundation in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't do that, I may have fallen away again. But because of that, it really was something that allowed me to continue to feel the love of Christ through music, which obviously us musicians, that's one of the ways that we kind of can relate to. I don't know. This is one of the ways worship is key to us versus some people. Everybody's got their thing.
Yeah. So, and, just for folks that don't know, you really pursued, you're still, heavily involved in music, but you pursued a career in music with a band where you went and you toured the country and you played really big venues. And so you've had exposure to, how do we call it? The secular music industry and all. I'm right on that. Yes. What's the band that you played with most often? Yeah.
It was a band called Small Town Sleeper, and we hailed out of Urbana, even though our drummer's from Colorado and guys were kind of from scattered out. But we ended up signing a big record deal back when I was like 21, and got to record in some of the biggest, most world-renowned studios on the planet, and came right out of the gates touring with Chris Daughtry, and we played shows with a huge list of big artists, and that's what I did for a living for several years, and it was a good living. It was a great, really cool lifestyle, traveling all over the place, meeting all kinds of celebrities that I idolized. And that was a great experience because you see people, Chris Daughtry, for example, the most humblest, coolest, chillest family driven kind of guy in a world of rock and roll, which we all know what that world is like. And we wanted to be part of that change, being a family man, being, instead of us being up till 6 o'clock in the morning on drugs, we were up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies from the 80s. And, we were doing geek stuff, but having a blast playing rock and roll and doing our thing. So yeah. And I could go on for days on the experiences I've had in that. And, it's like, where do you stop?
Right. So both of you have had exposure in the world of just playing music in front of people. And we'll just say being performers or entertainers. And then also being worshipers and leading people in worship. And my question for either of you, both of you, is having experience in both of those worlds, what would you say is one of the differences between getting up and playing a song for people to hear and enjoy, and leading a song where you're praising Christ and you're leading people into His presence? You're seeking to do that anyway. What would you say how would you describe some of the differences between the two?
Me personally, the hardest idea to really find a balance on is, this is not about me. This is about worship. This is about Christ. This is first not about me. It's not even about, and you know, you have a whole worship team. It's not really about us, but then it is, and it's finding that balance. It's finding that balance of being an entertainer, but not entertaining. You know what I mean? Not faking it, not being up there just jumping these hoops because people, they see it, you know, they know what authentic worship looks like. I struggle with that. I probably always will struggle with that, you know, because I'm naturally an entertainer. But at the same time, I feel like my energy, my stage presence, as I would always call it, is a form of my worship too. So that's, you know, that's a big struggle, I think, for any musician. Zach, he rocks out on stage. I've seen him. We've been up there side by side. And he's over there like, and I'm like, yeah, but he's doing it for, you know, Christ. He's doing it to show that his heart is in it. And so when I get confirmation on what that looks like and what that feels like, you know, honestly, like with my band when we were touring, I mean, I spin my guitar around my body. I stage dive into crowds playing guitar solos.
You need to do that at church, brother.
Yeah.
Do that at church.
I rock out. Like, I am all over the stage. I mean, sometimes I've like thrown up from in the middle of shows because I've just given it everything. I don't think I can do that in church.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that part.
And the older I get, the more out of shape I am. It's terrible, but that's my experience, though.
Yeah. Zach, what would you say?
No, I mean, like you said, you know, they're two very similar things to do. But for me, obviously, the worship one fills my cup. You know, it fills me up and gets me through the rest of the week compared to going and playing out somewhere just for a crowd, you know, that is just there, you know, to hang out for the night, and they're just looking for some good music, right? You know, as far as the worship stuff goes, I mean, people, you know, they want it to sound good, but most people don't really care what it sounds like. They're there, you know, to experience the relationship and connection to the Spirit of God. And there's just something, you know, I played, you know, like you said, I played out in these bars and things, but I never gave up, you know, the worship part of it. As far as, you know, if I was out at 3 a.m. on Saturday, a lot of times I was up at 7 a.m. playing at church too. And so I experienced, you know, within a, you know, 4 or 5 hour period, the difference between the two. And just I don't know how to explain it better than just the worship part of it. I mean, the spirit that you feel during that time of worship is so much stronger than just a connection with some fans.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And what music, you know, playing an instrument, being a musician, you know, when you try to do that to give glory to God, you know, in the sense that you're not just, you know, producing music, but you're giving him glory through this instrument and through the medium of music. My experience is that something happens to you. It's like, you know, I can play a song or sing a song, and be any great song, but when I use that to give him glory, to lift him up in that way, all of a sudden all of this becomes, it's not the end. It's not, the music isn't the point. The point is him, and something happens in that. It's like the music, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like you're transformed. The music, everything gets transformed because it becomes now a way to give him glory, which is, I don't know, to me it's an entirely different thing. It's on a different level. Because you guys know what I'm talking about, that experience that you have.
Yeah, because it's, it's kind of like the relationship between musicians even, you know what I mean? It's a hard thing to explain. It's a hard thing to put words to, because it's such, the feeling of what you're describing is so much stronger than how you could ever really describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally get that. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I'll close my eyes and I'm worshiping and I'm playing, and I open my eyes and I'm facing like behind me. Like it's like you just can't, you get lost in it. And I feel like for some people, putting their hands up and praising is the same for us when we're holding that axe. And we're just like, we're doing our, you know, our form of praising. And it's a different experience. I feel more comfortable doing that than I do out in the congregation with my hands up. How weird is that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you, Zach. You're gonna share a song with us, and it's a song that you've chosen. Maybe you tell us a little bit why. I think it's kind of an older song. It reminds me of some of the songs that you led a couple of years ago, which there's really good stuff in that. But what about this song made you choose it, and you know, why do you choose to share it with us?
Yeah, so I was just thinking back the other day and came across some old Third Day music, and their album Time came out in 1999. So I was 12 years old when this album came out, and I, you know, specifically remember playing a lot of these songs with that Final Answer band, and just the way that they touched me, like as soon as I turned them back on, it was like, man, like, you know, these are good songs still to this day. You know, I mean, they're different, like Derek was saying, you know, they're different than what we play nowadays, but they still, the lyrics of them are good. And it just kind of brought me back to being a 12-year-old again, and listening to, you know, Randy Warner sang a lot of these songs and stuff too. So it just, I don't know, it just kind of brought me back. But yeah. So it's Your Love, O Lord is the name of the song, and it comes from Psalm 36. And I had it pulled up here, and I mean, it's basically, you know, David was struggling with the world, you know, all the sinfulness of the world, and, you know, it still rings true to this day. You know, everything that's going on, the world is a lot of hate and sin in the world. And he says in verse 5 of Psalm 36 it's basically the lyrics of the song, but it says, "Your love, Lord, reaches to the heavens, and your faithfulness to the skies. Your righteousness is like the highest mountains, your justice like the great deep. You, Lord, preserve both people and animals. How priceless is your unfailing love, O God. People take refuge in the shadow of your wings, and they feast on the abundance of your house. You give them drink from your river of delights, for with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light." And so, you know, it's just, you know, how priceless is your unfailing love, you know, and taking refuge in his wings. You know, he's there to protect us through all of this, through COVID-19 even. So, yeah, I'll play you just a little verse and chorus of this.
Yeah, play a little bit for us, man.
Yeah, actually, I got my new guitar here too, actually. So,
ooh,
my wife surprised
it?
me with a guitar for my birthday. So you're lucky, because the other one's not any good. So, yeah, so here we go. So this is Your Love, O Lord. So, your love, O Lord, it reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. And your righteousness righteousness is like the mighty mountain. Yeah. Your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. And I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heaven. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Yeah,
That's classic, man.
Classic.
I didn't know it was that song until you started singing. I was like, oh, yeah, I know this song.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
It's an oldie.
Yeah.
And you read the lyrics, and I'm like, who could ever turn those lyrics into a song? They don't even rhyme.
Right. Third day.
But such a good melody, such a good song. I love that song.
Yeah, so simple, man, but still true to this day.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like I was probably wearing like baggy Jinkos back then, maybe skating around or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
You were 12? Man, that makes me feel really old, bro.
Well,
Always made me feel so old.
no, stop it.
So let me ask you guys, we only got just a minute here left, but if we're going to be encouraging people to take up to just embrace the posture of worship and, to take a step into worshiping Christ more truly, what word of encouragement would you bring? What would you say to people to try to encourage that?
I mean, for me, just you got to try to do it other than just on Sunday mornings. We have all these things that we do, through the week, and one thing I was thinking is, we have all these people that we idolize, and that. Like Michael Jordan, right? That we go out and, spend all his money on his shoes and things like that. And that's, worshiping something like that, it's the same thing that God wants from us, right? He wants us to, spend time with him every single day and think about him and just, be his light to the world, and that's what worship is, in my opinion. So just try to do it every day. Turn on some worship music and listen that way, but also just when you're out and about, just show the love of Christ to people. So
yeah, man. Yeah, and that tends to circle back that you do that throughout the week, and then when you come in on Sunday and we're together, you have that. It's richer, it's fuller, precisely because you're instead of it being that moment of worship, it's like you're entering into something that you how we say it's a familiar place.
Yeah.
It's not unfamiliar that you're in his presence because you've been walking with him in that way. Yeah. Derek, what would you say?
Probably focusing more on the reason you're doing it versus being good enough. A lot of people hold themselves back based off of their own personal opinion of where they are in their journey as a musician or a singer. And we've had conversations many a times about this topic, but basically, it's not about how good you are. It's a matter of how much you put your heart into it, how much you can demonstrate what worship really is and what that looks like. I'd much rather see somebody on stage not, hit a couple bum notes, sing a couple, flat notes, but really pour their hearts out, than to stand in their own protective cocoon and play perfect, or to be theatrical and showy and not really just. I'm a big fan of exposing your heart on that stage. I'm a big fan of that, and I don't care what you sound like. If you do that, I try to feel like on most days I want to try to absorb the idea of Christ is in the congregation, and I'm worshiping Him. And so I would love to encourage anybody who is even remotely interested in playing in worship to. That's Satan. You know what I mean? That's Satan trying to hold you back. If he's saying you're not good enough, if he's saying, no, man, you can't play the guitar player like that guitar player, like, throw all that in the trash can. Like, all that matters is your heart condition. Everything else is just overpowered with grace. So.
Yeah, and just to say a word of my own here, I was thinking about how usually the first song or two, my eyes are open, and I'm trying to lead the congregation, trying to connect with them while I'm connecting with Christ. But by the end of the worship service, no offense, but I'm not really thinking about anybody. Like, it's just about Him, At that point, it's like, it's not like I'm blocking people out per se, but none of that matters. And to be honest, to be in that place of true worship for me, I'll just say, I don't matter either. Like, everything else just kind of just disappears. And to encourage people to just forget the people, forget that, at least that anxiety that comes with other people. Not that other people don't matter, because they do, but typically when we're in that situation, like, we're thinking about what other people see of us or think about us. And that's the kind of stuff I think, like you said, just that kind of stuff is just from, just from the enemy. Let that go, man. And you could be completely absorbed. And the words of the songs, I mean, they're drawing us into that, where everything else fades, like that, the song that you sung, Zach, your love reaches to the heavens. Like, if we can be singing that and all we're thinking about is His love, like, that's it, like that, that's worship, so I don't know. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like, by the time I get to the end, man, I'm just just lost in Him. And that's I would encourage all of us to strive for something like that, at least, because I mean, for me, I know that's when it's genuine for me.
Well, and even you guys know, as a band director point of view, a lot of the comments that are being made from the band is like, well, Derek is the band director, but he doesn't talk a whole lot during the songs. I'm like, because I'm getting lost, y'all. I'm sorry. Like, I have to, like, come to by the end of the song to go, okay, we got to switch songs. All right. I really don't even want to do that. Like, I want to, like, stay in it. But it's such a great experience. It really is. And it's a great responsibility too. It really is, to be on that stage is to lead worship is such a responsibility, and I don't take that lightly, either. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, you got it. Go ahead, Zach.
No, I mean, I was just gonna, encourage, everybody out there that, when we are worshiping, just to do exactly what Wes said, just, try to let it all go and not worry about what's going on around you. I mean, it's easier said than done. I mean, it's tough for us too up on stage. I mean, it's kind of, just like you said, the first couple songs, you're trying to, get everybody involved and everything. But then once you get into that spirit, it's like, man, nothing else matters at that point. And I just encourage anybody out there, in the congregation, that once you get into that feeling, don't fight it.
Yeah.
Raise your hands,
Right
dance,
away.
whatever you need to do, man.
Yeah.
It's an awesome thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I miss you both, and I'm really looking forward to getting back together again and worshiping with you guys, honestly.
Yes, sir.
That's been one of the hardest things about this whole thing is just it's great to play and then to see the worship team, on Sunday morning on online and stuff. And it's not the same. It's not the same as when we're all together. So looking forward to that, man, praising him in the flesh with y'all.
No doubt,
Yeah.
man.
All right. Well, blessings, brothers, and we will connect again soon. Be safe.
Okay. See you guys.
All right. See you later.
Gathers. Blessings. Bye.